Imagine a machine that can land on a frozen highway, get rearmed by 6 people in 10 minutes, and take off to humble the world's most expensive stealth fighters. During the Arctic Trident exercises, that machine, the Saab Gripen, did exactly that. It achieved near-peer exchange ratios against the F-35 at a fraction of the cost. It proved that in the brutal reality of modern dogfights, expensive doesn't always mean best. But for decades, this Swedish masterpiece held a dark secret that the pilots who flew it rarely whispered. A secret that effectively made every Gripen ever built a hostage to a single office in Lynn, Massachusetts. The jet is Swedish. The radar is cutting-edge European tech. The weapons are continental. But the heart, the General Electric F414 engine, is American. And because that engine is manufactured on U.S. soil, it is chained to the invisible architecture of American power known as ITAR, International Traffic and Arms Regulations. This isn't just a set of rules, it is a technological kill switch. It means that while a nation might buy the Gripen to defend its borders, Washington, D.C. holds the master key to the cockpit. Under the ITAR framework, the United States State Department has a permanent veto over every sale, every spare part, and every hour of maintenance. If Washington decides they don't like who you're selling to, or if a trade war escalates, or if your foreign policy doesn't align with the Pentagon's latest directive, your Air Force can be grounded by a signature 3,000 miles away. Sovereignty in this world was an illusion. It was a lease. You owned the aircraft, but you were merely renting the permission to fly it from a government that also happens to be the primary salesman for your jet's biggest competitor, the F-35. Nations bought the Gripen because they wanted independence, only to discover they had traded one cage for another, a gilded cage with a Massachusetts-made engine. But the law of the market is cold. Every monopoly eventually creates the incentive for its own destruction. The kill switch was the ultimate choke point, and for 80 years, the world assumed it was permanent. They were wrong. The chain didn't just rattle, it just snapped. Engineering a military turbofan isn't just difficult, it is the absolute pinnacle of human mechanical achievement. There are only 5 companies on this planet capable of building an engine that can sustain 23,000 pounds of thrust while operating at temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Celsius. For 80 years, if you wanted a world-class engine in this thrust class, you went to Massachusetts. That was the monopoly. That was the leverage. And that is exactly what Rolls-Royce just obliterated. The breakthrough isn't just about power, it's about a concept called the direct drop-in. Historically, if you wanted to change the engine of a fighter jet, you had to redesign the entire airframe, a process that takes a decade and billions of dollars. But the engineers at Rolls-Royce executed a high-stakes technical heist. They designed the RM16 to be a physical clone of the GE F414. It has the same mounting points, the same fuel interfaces, and the same dimensions. You don't need a new plane, you just need a new heart. But while the dimensions are the same, the performance is a generation ahead. The RM16 produces 5% more afterburning thrust and is 8% more fuel efficient. That's not just a statistic. It translates to hundreds of miles of extra combat range and the ability to stay in a dogfight longer than any American-powered competitor. Even more devastating for the competition is the maintenance data. The RM16 is engineered for a 40% jump in reliability, meaning 40% less time sitting in a hangar waiting for parts that, under the old system, required a signature from a foreign government to ship. The Rolls-Royce mutiny was born from the cold realization that the American engine monopoly had become a strategic liability. By utilizing zero American components and zero ITAR-controlled technology, Rolls-Royce has effectively built a master key to the global fighter market. They didn't just build an engine, they built an exit ramp for every nation that is tired of being told when and where their own Air Force can fly. The monopoly didn't just meet a competitor, it met its replacement. For decades, the Canadian aerospace industry lived in the shadow of a ghost, the Avro Aero. In 1959, Canada's dream of building the world's most advanced interceptor was dismantled, literally chopped into scrap metal under intense political pressure. That trauma defined a generation, leaving Canada strategically tethered to American hardware and American permission. But in 2026, history isn't repeating. It's being rewritten. Canada's commitment of $2.4 billion to the Rolls-Royce RM16 program isn't just an investment. It is a calculated act of strategic redemption. This isn't merely about buying a new jet. Under the new defense industrial strategy, Ottawa is anchoring an entire post-American defense ecosystem on Canadian soil. By establishing a massive Rolls-Royce manufacturing hub in Montreal, a city already packed with aerospace titans, Canada is creating 3,200 high-tech jobs that the U.S. State Department cannot touch. These engineers won't just be maintaining engines, they will be the custodians of the master key. This facility will produce the high-pressure turbine blades and combustion liners that make the Gripen fly, turning Montreal into the global gateway for any nation seeking independence as a service. Think about the leverage. As the trade war intensified throughout 2025 and early 2026, the vulnerability of a single-source defense policy became a national security crisis. Canada watched as its traditional partners weaponized every dependency. In response, Ottawa didn't just walk away. They built a bypass. By positioning itself at the center of the Rolls-Royce Gripen Pact, Canada is no longer just a customer in the global fighter market. It is a primary node. Nations like Japan, India, and Australia, who have spent years chafing under the restrictive bureaucracy of ITAR, are now looking at Montreal. They see a future where they can upgrade their fleets, share technology, and deploy their pilots without waiting for a green light from a foreign capital. Canada has seized a $60 billion market opportunity by simply offering what the U.S. structurally cannot, a fighter jet with no strings attached. The message to the Pentagon is unmistakable. If you weaponize the choke point, the world will build a hub that doesn't need it. The Avro Aero ghost has finally been laid to rest, and in its place stands a multi-billion-dollar middle finger to the era of the technological veto. The Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, has spent 70 years applying one immutable law to every monopoly he's ever studied. Every choke point is a countdown. If you own the only bridge in town and you keep raising the toll, you aren't just making money. You are financing the construction of a tunnel. The American fighter engine monopoly was that bridge, and ITAR was the toll that finally became too expensive for the rest of the world to pay. In 2026, we are witnessing the most reliable law in economics play out in the sky. Every restriction, every blocked sale, and every bureaucratic delay from Washington acted as a direct deposit into the development budget of Rolls-Royce. Arrogance, it turns out, is the greatest venture capitalist for the competition. But the engine is just the first domino. Now that the master key has been forged in Darby and Montreal, the rest of the American defense monopoly is on notice. If the most complex component of a fighter jet, the turbine that sustains 23,000 pounds of thrust, can be bypassed, what happens to the rest of the chain? The radar subsystems, the satellite navigation receivers, the encrypted communication modules, every piece of hardware currently shackled to a U.S. export license is now a market opportunity waiting to be seized. The engineering blueprints for a post-ITAR world are already being drawn, and the business case is being proven in real time by a Canadian Air Force that no longer needs permission to defend its own Arctic. Mark Carney, standing in a hangar in Montreal beside the engine that cut the last chain, didn't need a 1,000-word speech to define this shift. He didn't need to mention the trade war or name the corporations in Massachusetts. He simply looked at a room full of pilots, engineers, and international observers and delivered the 9 words that will define Allied defense for the next half-century. Sovereignty means no one else holds the key to your cockpit. The silence that followed those words was the sound of a world order changing. The era where one nation could ground the globe's air power through a manufacturing monopoly is dead. The global fighter market has split into 2 clear tiers, the American-controlled and the American-free. And as more nations realize that their national security is worth more than a political soundbite, the independent option isn't just winning, it's becoming the new standard. The key to the cockpit has been returned to the people who sit in the seat. The chain is broken, the monopoly is over, and for the first time in 80 years, the sky is truly open.